Hey there, it's Meg Cowden with Seed to Fork and the Modern Garden Guild. Welcome to my July garden tour. I'm excited to share where the garden's at with you. We had a ton of growth in June, quite a few pests that we've been dealing with on a daily basis. It's been interesting. Every year is different with pests, as you know. The flowers are doing pretty well. We've had a lot of winds. We've had high temperatures, we've had a lack of moisture, so we've had some just tough conditions after what was a really long and cold spring. I think like the first 10 days of June were well below average, and then we spiked into the 90s. So it's been kind of a wild ride. As we know, this is climate change, and this is real, and this is going to continue to get more intense. So I really try to pay attention to this and what does well in the garden so that I can continue to create a resilient garden for us that will produce well across those fluctuations. So I look forward to sharing a little more in depth of what's going on here in the garden. So let's get going on the tour. All right, so our asparagus is done being harvested for the year. We've got some pretty meaty stalks on there, and the reason is that we really let them go. We probably could still be harvesting them. These are 5-year-old plants. We started them in February of 2017 from seed. We have been harvesting them since 2018, since May of 2018. Every year we harvest a little longer. We got 2 full months out of it. We got a little lazy towards the second half of June, but they are producing really meaty stalks, which means these plants are going to be even more vigorous next year. So the idea with perennial vegetables is that you want to let them go back and return their energy to the roots. So you can have a harvest period, but the plants need their time to shine. And so right now, for the rest of the season, these plants are going to be photosynthesizing and putting lots of energy back into the roots so that we can harvest those spears early next year. We look out for asparagus beetles. Japanese beetles like to also harbor and hang out and party in there. And at the end of the season, we always cut them all the way down because asparagus beetles do overwinter in the dead matter in the plant material. So it doesn't completely eliminate them. We have them every year, but we feel like it does help minimize their populations. So one of the pests we knew that we couldn't avoid this year was Colorado potato beetles. I mean, there's a lot of pests we knew we couldn't avoid, like cabbage whites and Japanese beetles, but the Colorado potato beetles built a population last year on our property. And so this year we saw our first adult Colorado potato beetles emerge. They pupate in the ground over winter before June. So for the past 4 or 5 weeks, every day we've been out here picking adults off, smushing eggs, and now we are at the point where we're just dealing with larvae. So there were a bunch of eggs that we missed, and we are finding larvae of all stages. It's a daily task. The nice thing about them is they're very easy to catch because they're very slow. So unlike the 3-lined potato beetle that's very quick, and the cucumber beetles that are very fast, Colorado potato beetles are very easy to manage, and I feel like we've got a pretty good handle on that. So this is my classic succession planting. I had 2 rows of cabbages in between those, and then I had rows of radishes in between those, and then I transitioned from radishes to beans. That is my second succession of beans, and they are finally doing okay. My first succession of snap beans is right here, and it is the 4th of July, and we are going to harvest beans for dinner. I think this might be the earliest I've had beans in season. I don't tend to plant them super early, but I planted these on, I think, May 8th this year. And we had a pretty cool spring. They germinated well, and they started flowering a little over a week ago. So that is pretty exciting. It's always great when these kind of new things that we trial work out. They don't always, but that's the whole point, isn't it? So the other pest that we've been working pretty hard to get on top of is the 3-lined potato beetle that I think I had mentioned. And I did keep this Cape gooseberry covered for the first 2 months it was outside. And I see a few 3-lined potato beetle adults, but I think by and large the adults have come and gone. So I'm letting this plant go, and I'm hoping that it has enough strength at this point to weather any future 3-lined potato beetle infestations. They might happen again if I have to start killing the larvae again, I will, but I'm hoping that I'm beyond that. Our tomatillos look fabulous. They're loaded with flowers. They're almost 5 feet tall, growing a new variety this year. Very excited, fingers crossed that we're gonna finally have salsa verde in our root cellar this year. So in terms of our spring pea season, we are still in snow pea season and shelling pea season, but by and large, our snap peas, which do produce slightly faster, have come and gone. So I am gonna be getting ready to pull these out, and this bed will get reset with some fall plantings. Let's have a look at our tomatoes. So our tomatoes are doing really well this year. I have been pruning kind of the bottom 18 inches or so of leaves to try and prevent any splashing of fungal diseases. We've also been spraying a foliar spray on them, which I think has been working really well. More information on that can be found in my Modern Garden Guild. And yeah, we are quite a ways out from tomatoes, but like take for example, this is my Paul Robeson. This plant is usually absolutely devoured by Septoria leaf spot. I don't really see any leaf spot yet. Leaf curling is very common on plants that bear fruit heavily. It's just kind of a physiological response. It's not a disease, so I'm not worried about that. But by and large, they're looking really nice. They've got my normal sweet alyssum, and then I had room here for flowers, trying to tuck more flowers into the garden this year. And it's just a really beautiful garden view. So our Brussels sprouts are interplanted with heat-tolerant lettuce, and we are just about ready to start enjoying this planting. We're still eating some of our iceberg lettuce from June, as well as some romaine, but we're going to be transitioning to our heat-tolerant lettuce now through probably September. So squash vine borer is an annual pest that didn't really used to be an issue for us, but maybe that's because we were gardening in the city. I started noticing them in 2019 on our property, and in 2020 I started noticing damage. Last year I was a little more proactive about it, and this year I'm taking the step to physically cover my summer squash right now. I did find eggs on this plant that I removed before I covered. I've found 3 adult squash vine borers. 2 are no longer with us. 1 got away today. And then I've got my other squash as well that is up there with insect netting up by the patio. So I'm going to leave the netting on for a few more weeks with this first generation of adults as they emerge and attempt to find places to lay eggs in the garden, and hopefully don't find any places, and see how that goes. So an ever-changing kind of approach in landscape, constantly trying to find new ways to make the garden resilient. And I don't love physical barriers. I don't know if you've followed me for a while, but I find that they detract from the overall garden beauty, so I really try not to use them if I don't have to. But this feels like a really great time-sensitive way to minimize my pest pressure and even pest load on our property. So the thing I love about planting multiple types of cabbages in a succession garden is that my green cabbages came into season first, and so that was both my tiara, and I also grew Premax, which is an open pollinated cabbage variety. And then the next to come into season is our Savoys. So they're kind of what I consider like my mid-main season cabbages. And then more of a full season cabbage or a late season cabbage are our Integro red cabbages. Red cabbages are they're like limes for us. We try to keep them in the house all the time. So we are moving out of green cabbage season into Savoy season. And then ideally, if I've timed it right, which I don't think I have this year, we will have a red cabbage in the fridge now through like February. So that's always my goal. I don't always hit the mark, but that's what I'm aiming for when I succession plant my cabbages. So one of our many types of corn we're growing this season, and this is an old flint corn variety that I bought from Native Seed Search. And it's supposed to make really wonderful flint corn. The thing I'm really curious about it though is that corn is latitude sensitive. So I am very curious to see how this responds to our daylight hours. and how it grows. Next to it, I've got some dapple gray bush beans. I've got some Sumpter pickling cucumbers. And then I've got a watermelon, and it's not doing well on this trellis. I'm going to take this trellis totally off and let this really just take over the ground and cover the ground, which will be better for the ground anyway. So I planted the other triangle bed with japonica striped maize as an ornamental corn this year. I've wrapped it with more dapple gray beans. I've got some sesame interplanted in here, and I've got a few more heads of cabbage, just 2 more red cabbages here. I've pulled all of my green cabbage out of here, and I've also got our Rasa di Milano onions as well. So this has been a really fun bed to watch kind of fill in. It's going to be kind of an ornamental bed here for most of the rest of the season, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it looks against the barn. Thanks so much for coming along with me on this garden tour. I hope you learned a little bit more about our garden and about gardening in general. And if you'd like to learn more information, I encourage you to check out my website, seedtofork.com, as well as consider signing up for the Modern Garden Guild, the MEG, where you can go in depth with me, gardening advice, and really see all the behind the scenes of this garden, more than I'm able to share in these garden tours. So as always, appreciate you taking the time to watch and subscribe. Take care. Have a great month in the garden.